How do you get people excited about a new product launch that you haven't launched yet? More importantly, when do you do it? My name is Jason Voiovich. I help inventors and innovators get their timing right. So let's get into it right now. All right, here's what we're looking at. This is on the Invent With Me Discord channel. This one comes from Scott R. He is the inventor of MagTracks. We'll get into that in just a little bit. We've got a question for Grant. That's Grant Martin, the head of the Invent With Me Discord community. Could we start a channel for pre-sales and see if we can get some conversation about how this works, like a forum on a website, a waiting list, and we're not talking about something like Kickstarter. So obviously this question comes right from Scott, and we're going to answer it right now with some details for him. But this is a kind of question that I have seen dozens of times in my career. We want to generate excitement ahead of a product launch, but how do we do it? What does the timeline look like? So let's get into a 4-step process for how to do that. And the same sort of process you can copy with your own invention, your own innovation, to start generating excitement in the right way. The first step, build a timeline. This part is really important. There is a time from when you're ready to ship the product to when you're ready to start talking about it. Usually that's about 4 to 6 weeks. Now, where does that 4 to 6 week number come from? That's kind of a perceptual time issue. If you launch something, let's say a year or a year and a half in advance and say, hey, this is coming out in 2027, 2028, and people get that idea from new Marvel movies or movie trailers or things like that. The reality, though, for products is people just don't have that same kind of attention span. 4 to 6 weeks is usually ideal to help the user, the consumer in this case, maintain that level of excitement over a shorter period of time. Otherwise, you need to do a lot of marketing to make sure that you build and keep that interest. And for most of us, that's just not in the cards. We're not launching the next Iron Man movie. And if you are, you're probably not listening to this anyway. Here's the thing. What you want to avoid is what I'd call the country squares mistake. What were country squares? Country squares were invented back in 1950s, 1960s, and it is essentially the first toaster pastry. And Post invented that. They came up with it, and they announced that they were going to launch a few months from now, is I think 4 or 5 months, something like that. In the meantime, once they put that press release out, the folks at Kellogg's looked at that and said, okay, we've got 5 to 6 months, a really long period of time to essentially copy it. And that's exactly what they did. And you probably know country squares better by its Kellogg's name, Pop-Tarts. And again, once Pop-Tarts came out, country squares was basically relegated to the dustbin of history. So don't make that kind of mistake. You don't want to be starting so early that you're not ready to ship for so long. You need to make sure that that amount of time is tight enough so that you can build excitement, but you're not giving your competitors enough of a window to figure out how to basically go around you. So there's a sweet spot in there. 4 to 6 weeks is usually ideal. If it's a digital product with the amount of speed that AI is catching up and allowing people to build, you may have a much shorter window of time. You may be talking 4 to 6 days, not 4 to 6 weeks. So again, this timeline is going to vary based on the type of product we're talking about. But on Invent With Me, we're usually talking about physical products. So physical products have a timeline that is usually measured in weeks, not days or hours. Again, one last thing here too, if you're still thinking about developing product, you're still working on it, you're still working kinks out, you are not ready to start talking about it. This is really important. Kickstarter is a place to do that when you're talking about preliminary activities. It is not the sort of thing to do when you are kind of building excitement ahead of a launch. Those are two very different things. So we already said we're not talking about Kickstarter, so we're not in the development process. We are thinking about the launch process. That's a very clear distinction we want to make. All right, so let's move on to step 2. We have not made the country squares mistake. Now we need to think a little bit about AIDA. AIDA is an acronym, AIDA. It stands for awareness, interest, desire, and action. There are lots of different ways to think about this marketing funnel. They call it a purchase funnel here. It's essentially the process by which people go through and they start to understand, am I aware of your product? Do I know it exists? Am I interested in it? Does it seem to meet my needs? Do I want it? That's desire. And then am I ready to take action? Most of the time people talk about this in terms of a purchase funnel, which the graphic I pulled is exactly that. But when you're thinking about a pre-purchase funnel, the action isn't the buy, the action is to get on a waiting list. It works exactly the same way. Don't think that your waiting list is an awareness tactic. It's not. You need to go through this funnel. Now, again, there are other folks who will look at the jobs to be done funnel. Those are great. I'll link to those in the show notes here. Don't worry about that so much. Keep it simple. Awareness, interest, desire, and action. You can do a lot worse than just following that model. So what we're talking about here is MagTrax. And this is Scott's product. It's his invention. It's a way to track things that you don't want to lose. Let's say that again. This is not the product you want to lose track of somewhere. So again, really key. But again, who is the audience that's going to be interested in this? Well, it's owners of said product, not everybody. So again, you can start to think about your target audience. Your target audience is the front of that purchase funnel. That's why it's bigger. It is all owners, not the ones eventually who will get on your waiting list. So let's move on. So you got to understand whatever your customer sequence is. So start to define how many people are in that total market potential. How many people do you think could be interested in something like this? Not everybody. Who's realistic? Who is going to want this? And again, it's wanting something that's may not be quite ready yet. And then finally, who's going to go onto that list? For lack of a better metric, if you're confused about like, well, I don't know, how do I figure out those numbers? I usually use the 80-20 rule, that 20% of your people in the awareness will make it to interest. 20% of the people will make it to desire. 20% of those will make it to action. It's going to be a pretty small number, but if you don't have any other mechanism to figure out what those numbers will be, it's a great place to start. So think about the 80-20 rule. Let's move on to plan tactics to align to the stages. And this is really what Scott was getting at, what I think the rest of the community is going to be thinking about. And that is, well, what should I be doing? What are the actions I should be taking? This is a great model for helping us align what objective are we trying to accomplish at each sequential stage of this funnel. Not all tactics are created equal, and not all tactics do the same things really well. Yes, could you get Google pay-per-click to get me all the way down to the waiting list? Theoretically, yes. Practically, no. What you want to do is you move people through that process. Don't expect a pay-per-click ad to drive all the way down to the action phase or even to the desire phase. The idea behind email blasts, renting an email list from an organization that is reaching your target market, pay-per-click, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, whatever it is for you. This is not a complete list of tactics. Your job at the awareness level is simply and only move them to interest. That's your job. You want to get them kind of interested in this. Maybe I want to show them a video. Maybe I want to get them to a white paper. Maybe I want to direct them to a podcast appearance I've been on. What newsjacking, that's the third one, is, hey, there's an article out there that talks about your particular category or your product, or it's related. You can, it's like hijack, like newsjack that to say, hey, here's a big news item going on right now, and here's my take on that. So that's comment culture. You want to make sure that you're doing that as well. So you need to be keeping an eye out for those opportunities. So make sure, hey, if that's popular on YouTube, there's this YouTube video going viral. Or a few days ago, I did a video on the Ferrari Luce because that was blowing up. This is the sort of thing you want to be paying attention to. Through that, on your podcast appearance, in your YouTube video, on your white paper, what I want to do is I want to get them to the desire phase. I want to get them to my dedicated landing page. I want to make sure that they are on a page that makes the case for why they want this, because the action on that page is to get them to sign up for my waiting list. You see how that entire process works. I'm not trying to get the waiting list right away. I'm not trying to get married on the first date. Always remember that there is a sequence to these things that's natural. Now, it can move fast and people can jump really quickly through these phases, but everyone's got things to do. Don't assume that your audience is paying attention to only your thing. It never does. Let's move on to step 4. This is align your tactics to the timeline. Okay, so what we've got here is the purchase funnel over on the side. We've got our tactics, and now we're going to build a general timeline. Remember, we've got maybe 4 to 6 weeks, whatever that is. What you want to do is you essentially build a project chart, like a Gantt chart. It doesn't matter how you do it. I just built this in Figma with little boxes. You can use sticky notes. It doesn't really matter. It's the logical process of planning your events on a timeline so you know kind of how they all fit in. Notice how there are email blasts going out here. There's maybe an email rental list that you've got in there. Make sure that that email actually goes out in that window you want it to go out. Just basic stuff, but I can tell you how many times people will forget that. I want to make sure I'm running my YouTube, Facebook, and Google PPC all along that entire time. I want to make sure that they are supporting all of this the entire time. I may be doing newsjacking, different videos, podcasts, white papers. Now, some of these videos might have happened way back here. That's fine. You can link people to an older video. Just make sure that that video has in its comments or in its show notes that you want to get to the dedicated landing page. Don't forget that. You want to make sure if you're going to an older video, make sure to update that so that people are going to the right spot. Finally, make sure you get your DLP, your dedicated landing page, and your waiting list infrastructure built in advance. And again, it's one of those, hey, I'm ready to start my process 6 weeks away. Now I'm going to build my DLP. Now I'm going to build my list gathering. Yes, could you build these things really quickly with Claude or with Lovable? Sure, but those few days that it takes just to kind of debug and to test and make sure everything connects together and you're tweaking on the language and the visuals, that is time that you could be spending talking to customers. Never confuse the building phase with the deployment phase in marketing. They are not the same things. Build all of that stuff in advance. So again, just like you're working on your product and you're making sure that you've got all your packaging done, your instructions, the fulfillment, that has to be done in advance. Your marketing, there's a lot of your marketing that has to be done in advance. You could even say, hey, make sure that you've written all the ad copy for your pay-per-click, for your emails. Do that all in advance as well. And then finally, with your dedicated landing page, make sure that as it goes, you're keeping it fresh with new updates, new videos. Remember that people are going to be jumping into this process at any point. So someone might get this blast and they might be starting to move through the process right here in your timeline, right up in the top. Others might get this, it might take the 4th blast for them to start. You want to make sure that wherever people enter the timeline, that your dedicated landing page is always being updated. Another key benefit of that is that when you think about someone who came in here, they're in that blast, they watched a couple of these videos, they went to the dedicated landing page. Awesome, they're on the waiting list. Reminder, okay, we stopped marketing to them. No. This is a key aspect of perceptual time. I want to make sure that in this process, Scott is always making sure he is validating the choice to be on that waiting list. So do you give someone on that waiting list, hey, here's a link to this video. Here's a link to the podcast. Here's this email we were writing. Here's this next video. Here's this news item. Here's something that's new on the landing page you want to check out. You want to make sure that you're not overdoing it with people, but hey, I'm on the waiting list. I'm excited about it. What you don't want people to do is forget about it. In the time where, between the time that they signed up and the time you are ready to ship or you're ready to sell, you have to make sure that you are building that excitement along. The more you build excitement, the more you will be able to convert waiting list people into actual customers. So that's it for this video today. If you've got additional ideas, thoughts on additional tactics you've seen work really well or timelines you think make a lot of sense, post the notes in the comments. I'll respond to them, maybe even do another full video. Until then, I'll catch you on the next one.